friends, this is Karen from Blue Rooster Farm, and today we're in the kitchen and we're getting ready to cook up some soup for dinner and then make a delicious, comforting dessert. So if you want to see what we're making, stick around. Thanks for sticking around. Here we are in the middle of January. It is a very cold day. It is in single digits here in Missouri, and we need some warm comfort food. So today I am going to be making a soup, and this soup does not have a name. It is one that I make several times and we really like it. And it's just a soup that I came up with just because we like the flavors, and I had this stuff on the pantry shelf all the time. So you're gonna see how I cook when I'm cooking off camera. I use what we have and make do. And so far I haven't had any complaints. So what this is kind of a marriage between a tortellini soup and an Italian wedding soup. So it is really good, and I think you're gonna enjoy it. Now, soups are one of those things that it was invented because people had stuff in their refrigerator that needed to be used up. You put it all in a pan, you add some broth or even water, mix it up, add some seasonings and spices, and you had a good, healthy meal that would sustain you. And anymore, we feel like we always need to have a recipe for a soup, but you don't. Check your refrigerator, see what you have. Is there some stuff that you need to use up? Use it up, make a delicious soup with it. So for this one, I am using things that I guess I preserve and put in the freezer or in canning. And so most of the stuff that we're using today is things that I have prepared ahead of time, and it's already in the freezer. And so that's why we eat this soup quite a bit, because it's really easy and I have most of the stuff on hand and I can just pull it out of the freezer or open up a can. So what I'm going to start with is I'm going to put a little bit of oil, and I'm going to use my Instapot, but I'm not going to use it as a pressure cooker. I'm going to use it as a slow cooker, and you don't have to use it as a slow cooker. I am, because I'm just getting all of this done now, and we're not going to eat until several hours from now, but I want to get it done because we're going to be making a dessert in just a second, and then I have some things that I want to do, and then everything's going to be done and we can just sit down and eat. So I'm going to use this as a slow cooker, and we're going to start with the saute function. And when we do that, the heat comes from the bottom and it gets pretty hot in there. So I've just added enough olive oil to coat the bottom of the pan, and I'm going to take some of the veggies and stuff that I have on hand. Now, a lot of these things you may not have on hand, and you don't have to add them, or you may not like them. And if that's the case, don't add them if you don't like them. Only put things in your soup that you like. So this is just some of our sweet peppers, and this year I had just made them into strips and froze them. I've also got chopped. I've got them all different ways, whole, ready to stuff. But I just grabbed a bag of the sliced ones because I had just made fajitas a couple of days ago, and I did not use all of the peppers in this bag. So I'll just use what's left of this bag before I open up another one. And I'm just chopping these into little bite-sized pieces. And, make a rustic soup. Make it all different sizes. Make it really hearty. This is going to have several things that are large in it and not really tiny bite-sized pieces. You've got your tortellini. We're going to be adding meatballs as well. So there will be all different sizes, and a soup that has everything the same size is kind of boring. So we're going to make this just a fun look at it and say, that looks good kind of soup. So I don't know, I probably got 1.5 cups of peppers. Again, I don't measure, I just use what I have. I've got 2 stalks of celery, and our son Landon stopped by today, so he is going to be eating with us. And I know he doesn't like celery, but I know that if I cut it up into small enough pieces, it will not probably bother him, because I think it's a texture thing and maybe a taste thing as well. But we like it, Andy and I like it, so we'll add it. He doesn't complain. And I'll just do really small pieces. I was going to make a quite small batch of this, but when he showed up, I thought, well, I'm just going to make a big batch, and I'm going to send some home with him so that he can have some lunches to take to work. So again, if you don't like celery and you don't want celery in yours, leave it out. I'm also going to be adding some carrots, and the carrots I'll kind of cut in larger chunks because I like that to be kind of a hearty vegetable in the soup. But this right here, we're going to get this pretty small. And I'm going to be sauteing it down so it will get very soft and will really kind of just melt into the broth. I think you can see me chopping here. So I did fine slices. I split the celery a couple of times, and then I just did fine slices. And now I'm just going back over and giving it a rough chop. Now, if you have small kids and they don't like vegetables, if you cut them up small enough and you saute them down and cook them down, they're not going to notice them as much. The meatballs and the tortellini will, I'm sure, appeal to them, and so they will enjoy that and they will eat it. Okay, so our peppers are getting hot in there. Now we're adding our celery. Let's just give it a little toss in there. Then I've got 2 regular sized carrots that I have gone ahead and peeled, and I am going to chop these. And I'm going to go ahead and go in half first, long ways. And that way I have a flat surface to lay my carrots on, and then I can set them side by side. And then I'm not making them too thin. I'm keeping them, half an inch thick. You can cut another time across and have smaller pieces, but like I said earlier, I want these to be large, and our tortellini will still be larger than these, and our meatballs. And so, you know, the thickest part, we have slices like that. Let's add these, let them start sauteing. I like to saute my vegetables before I add my broth. It just makes them cook up a little quicker. It also, I feel, gives it a nicer texture. But you can always just add everything together, turn your crock pot on, and slow cook it. That would be fun too. And that one I didn't cut even, so I'm going to cut it again. And if you have the smaller carrots, the little finger carrots that you eat for snacks, I use those a lot for cooking too. You just put several together and slice them up. I know some people don't like to use a knife and they will put them in their food processor. I just don't want to get anything else dirty. If you are chopping your vegetables, make sure that you have a sharp knife. A sharp knife is much safer than a dull knife. Okay, we get these scraps in the scrap bucket. And I have all of the things I want to saute in here. I'm going to add a little bit of garlic powder, and this is all to taste. I will probably add a couple teaspoons full. There's a teaspoon, there's a half, there's 2 teaspoons. If you don't like garlic, don't put it in. I like to give our soups just a tiny bit, a tiny hint of a kick at the end, but I don't want you to eat it and then say, oh, that's spicy hot. I want you just to feel a little bit of it after you've eaten it, and it just seems to kind of stick around a little bit. So I have some red pepper flakes, and I think that's about 1/4 of a teaspoon, just a few. And again, this is going to make a big pot. I'm also going to go ahead and add a bay leaf. And if you don't have bay leaves, don't add it. Now while this is sauteing, and I think I'm going to go ahead and add salt and pepper. I'm not going to add too much salt because I want to have taste it at the end and then add the additional salt. I don't want to over salt it. So I'm just going to do a pinch or 2. And that way those vegetables will kind of start sweating a little bit. And then a couple big pinches of pepper. Let's just stir that up a little bit and let that keep cooking. That smells good. Now that we've got those seasonings in there, that's smelling really good. Now in a little bit, once we add our liquid and our broth, I'm going to be adding some spinach. Now if you watched my channel this summer and saw that we had spinach, I think I did the video this year, either this summer or last summer, either 24 or 23. When I freeze our spinach, I first of all wash it up, I blanch it really quickly, throw it in cold water, and then I take it and I make really tight little balls of it. And you can make larger size if you have a larger family. I just make smaller ones, and then I can use however many I need. And there's a lot of spinach in this little ball because, as we know, spinach shrinks, or it just wilts up so much after you get it hot. And then when you squeeze it together so the water comes out, it even gets smaller. So there's a lot of spinach in each of these balls. If you want to, and you don't have your own spinach, you can either use fresh, and you'd probably need to use, depending on the size of your package, a couple of big handfuls. Or if you buy the frozen, it would probably be one of those small packages of spinach. And I just put these into balls as whole leaves, so I need to chop them still. If I were to thaw them out, I've thawed them out a little bit, but if I were to thaw them out in water, and they would just open up and be leaves. I don't want them to be too small because I don't mind them being large pieces in our soup, and it makes it very tasty. And we all know how good spinach is for you, so anytime I can get spinach into something, I do. Put it into quiches, scrambled eggs, casseroles, soups. Okay, and that's been rough chopped, and I'm not going to put it in just yet because I don't want to tear it up while these veggies are sauteing, and they are getting pretty good. Now, I could add onions, and the reason I'm not adding onions to mine, if you're using just plain broth, add onions, and add as many as you like. A whole onion is not too much. Let it saute in here until it's clear, or, translucent. I am using our French onion soup. This, I feel, tastes so, so good when I make soups now. I used it the other day because I couldn't find my beef broth, or I was not wanting to go downstairs to get a can of beef broth, so I just used this, and it is so delicious in soups. And so I am using one of our French onion jars of soup. You can use canned soup off the grocery store shelves. I believe it's a concentrate, so you have to dilute it. If I'm right, I'm not sure, read the can. And if it is, just add the water you need to add. You'll probably need several cans, 2 or 3, and depending on how much you're making. But I'm going to be using one of these large cans, and it's a really rich French onion soup. Plus, I'm going to add some beef broth as well, and I've got my beef broth over there. And the reason you're going to need quite a bit of liquid is because we're going to be cooking tortellini in there, and of course that's going to be soaking up a lot of liquid. So I think these are just about ready. It looks like the celery is really soft. The peppers are really soft. The carrots, we don't need them to cook all the way, but they look like they're softening up. I think we're ready to add some of our other things. So I'm going to start with our French onion soup. And again, this is a quart. And we're going to pour all of this in there. I just love the French onion soup on these shells because it is great for roast beef. It's great for soups. It's just great to eat a can of this with a little cheese and toast on top. That is delicious. Then I'm going to add, and I've got about 4 cups of broth here. I'm going to go ahead and add all of that. Now, use what you have. If you have canned broth that's chicken or beef, use that. If you have bouillon cubes or the little jars of the beef, I guess, broth where you spoon it out better than bouillon or whatever, use that. Use what you have. You're going to have so much delicious flavors coming from all of these vegetables that the base of your soup is going to be filled with flavor regardless whether it came from a can, whether it's just bouillon cubes, it will still taste delicious. Now I'm going to add our spinach, and that's going to go for a swim. And I'm going to add some beans, and I'm using what we have. We have Great Northern beans. If you have white cannelloni beans, those are good. I prefer the white beans in this soup, but you can use whatever you have. And the reason I think is just probably more of looks. I don't know. But I am using a whole pint, and I'm not even rinsing. I'm just putting the whole jar in. That will also help thicken up the soup a little bit. And that is looking good. And then I am going to add some of my frozen meatballs, and I did a video on how I take and make meatballs and then freeze them. I flash freeze them, and then I put them all in a big Ziploc bag, and I just grab whatever I need. And I probably have 2 cups at least of meatballs in here, and I made these fairly small. They're not large because I want to use them for soups too. And so you can buy this at store meatballs. You can even just brown your ground beef, your ground pork, your ground chicken, your ground turkey, whatever meat you want to add, just brown it, add it to this, and you're good. But meatballs is something that I have on hand in the freezer, and it's what I normally put in this soup. So we're gonna add that. So I've got this ready. I'm going to put this on slow cook, clear that out, and I am going to let that start. So it's got 6 hours on here, but it's not going to take that long. I am just putting it in the slow cooker so that I can do other things, and I know this is all ready to go. Now, right before we get ready to eat, I will probably come back And about 20 or 30 minutes before we eat, I'm going to boost this up again to probably saute or something so it gets to boiling. And then I'm going to be adding our tortellini. Now I just get this at Aldi and it's on the refrigerated shelves. You can use any tortellini you want. There's frozen tortellini as well, and it's delicious. I really like the sausage tortellini. It's really good, and I thought I had a thing of it, but I have the chicken, and it's gonna go in there. Even though we have beef for the meatballs, we're gonna add whatever we have on hand, and that's what I have on hand. And this is the big family size, and I think since our son's here, I'm gonna add the whole thing. I was going to cut it in half and just use part of it, but with all of us here and with Andy and him needing lunches for the week, we'll make a big pot of it. So I'll hold off on this until this is ready, and then I'll bring you back when this needs to be added. Now, don't go away because I'm gonna clean this up, move this to the back corner over here, and we're gonna make a dessert. Welcome back. And of course you'd come back because who doesn't stick around for dessert? Well, today we are going to be making a hot fudge pudding cake. Now, this is a recipe that I have had stuck on the inside of my cabinet doors for over 20 years. And you can see this newspaper clipping is brown and quite old. I used painter's tape to stick it on so it wouldn't damage. But I use this basic recipe, but I jazz it up a lot. Because when I first made this, and you have to remember, we're used to homemade food, the real stuff, real rich foods and stuff. And so when I first made the hot fudge pudding cake, I thought, you know, it's really good, but it didn't taste as good as it could. So let me show you how I jazzed this recipe up. And this recipe is probably the same recipe or very similar to the one you have. But I'm gonna make it richer tasting and more homemade. So here's what I do. There's several different steps to this, and it's really simple. In fact, whenever I asked my boys back when they were home, you know, what do you want for dessert? You know, and they would say, well, what are our options? And I said, well, tell me what you'd like and I'll tell you if it's an option or not. Hot fudge pudding cake was always at the top. Now, they just love it. And a while ago, Landon walked through and said, what are you making? And I said, well, look at the ingredients. I had it laid out. I said, guess. And he guessed. And then he said, woohoo. He said, this is a good day. So this is a great recipe. And if you make it, your kids are going to love it too. So let's see. The first thing we're going to do, and you don't need a mixer, but I just have always used one, so I just pulled my mixer over here. We are going to take, and we're going to mix some dry ingredients together. So we're going to take 2 cups of flour, just regular flour. And we're going to take 1/2 cup of cocoa. Now, this recipe is actually doubled because I like to make it in a 13 by 9 pan. But if you half this recipe that I share with you today, it's a good size for just 2 people, you know, and then you'll have your leftovers, of course, and it'll just make like a 9 by 9 pan, and that's perfect. But since we always had big eaters with the boys here, I always would put it in a 13 by 9 and we could have it for 2 desserts in a row. So again, I have 2 cups of flour, 1/2 cup of cocoa. We're going to add 1.5 cups of sugar, just white sugar, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And then we're just going to kind of whisk those ingredients together. Then we're going to add our liquids. And we are going to add 1 cup of milk, just regular milk. We're going to add 2/3 cup of melted butter. Get all that out of there. We're also going to add 2 teaspoons of vanilla. And again, I just eyeball it. And sometimes it gets more in there, and that's okay. This is our homemade vanilla. I just put it in this little bottle. I take it out of our big jar that has all the beans in it and just put it in here. And then I add some more vodka or whatever alcohol I'm using to keep the vanilla beans, and it just starts making some more. It just never ending, never ending. And we're gonna also add, and this is optional, this is, you know me, I always like to add a little bit of almond flavoring to chocolate cakes and cookies. It just gives that, just kind of it's an almond flavor, just a sweet taste. It's kind of like, what's in there? And so we can add a teaspoon of almond extract. And of course, you don't have to add it if you don't have it or you don't like it. Now we're going to mix this all up. And did you notice there's no eggs? So this is a great recipe when egg prices were really high. It's also a great recipe if you like to test the batter. You don't have to worry about raw eggs. Let me scrape the sides. And what you're going to come up with is a pretty thick batter, and that's okay. It's almost like a brownie batter. Give it a little. And I like to whip mine just a little bit, kind of lighten up the color and just make it a little creamier. And you really don't have to worry about it becoming tough because you're going to be having pudding on this. So at this point, we have the cake portion of our hot fudge pudding cake. And like I said, there's no eggs in here. And so if you always worry about tasting dough that has eggs in it, you don't have to worry. That's good. Now we've got this portion done, and I'm just going to kind of make sure I've got everything mixed well. Yeah. And we're going to take a 9x13 pan, and this one is actually a little taller. It's my lasagna pan, but just your regular 9x13 glass pans I find work better, but you can definitely use a metal one. It may get a little browner around the edges. And we're just going to smooth this batter all out nicely. When you whip it up a little bit, because you have butter in there, it just kind of gets these little air pockets and gets nice and fluffy and creamy. And that starts firming up. It went from being a liquid butter to, once it starts cooling down, it even thickens up more. And so this looks just delicious on its own, but we are not finished yet. So normally when you make this, you take boiling water and you also have your sugar and some cocoa and stuff, and you pour the boiling water on top. Well, if you are used to making homemade pudding, you know that you don't make homemade chocolate pudding, hot fudge pudding, with water. You use milk. And so that's what I am going to use. And also, when I make hot or homemade chocolate pudding or chocolate pie filling, I also like to add a few chocolate chips to my pudding and melt those in. That just gives it this really deep, rich flavor. So what I am going to do is I'm going to take a cup of chocolate chips, and you can use whatever kind. I'm just using semi-sweet, and I am going to sprinkle those around. Now, if you want to use fewer, that's fine. A lot of times I will use fewer if it's just my husband and I eating it, but I'll go ahead and use, I think I'm only going to use about 3/4 of a cup, but you can use a whole cup if you'd like. Then we are going to take and we are going to mix together a 3/4 cup of brown sugar, and you always pack your brown sugar to measure it. 3/4 cup of white sugar, and I believe this is 1/2 cup of cocoa. And put that in there, and let me grab another spoon. We'll do a whisk. And we're just going to get that mixed together. I am also going to add a little bit of salt, because when I make pudding, I use a little salt in it. Now, we do have salt in the cake, but remember, this pudding is going to not be inside the cake, it's going to be outside. So I'm going to use a pinch of salt just to bring that chocolatey fudge flavor out. And my brown sugar is just a little lumpy. It's been sitting for a while. I've been baking with it lately. And then we're going to sprinkle this mixture on top of our batter and chocolate chips. And you just want to evenly sprinkle it. Now, this is a really rich dessert, and I suggest you serve it with ice cream. It does say on the recipe, you know, serve with whipped cream. We like to put a scoop of ice cream on ours because it's so rich. And you really don't need much of it either, because it is really good and rich. Okay, let me wash my hands. Okay, so we've got that topping on. Now what we're going to do is we are going to take, make sure I have this here. We've got 2.5 cups of milk. We usually use water, but because I like to make this taste like real pudding on the cake, I'm using milk. Now, if you make homemade pudding, you know that using a higher % fat makes your pudding even richer. So you can decide what kind of milk you want, whether whole milk, skim milk, 2% milk, whatever you want to do. Or if you want to add a couple tablespoons of cream to it as well, that's fine. So we're going to take this, and we're also going to flavor the milk with a little bit of vanilla. And I'm going to add about a teaspoon of vanilla to this, because pudding always has a little flavoring in it like that. So we want to make this to be like real pudding and real cake. So now we're just going to take this boiling milk, and I just put it in the microwave and got it to a boil, and we're going to pour it over. Now, like I said, the original recipe used boiling water. And if you only have boiling water, that's fine. It's just going to give it a different flavor. it won't be as creamy, and this is just a richer flavor. So it's up to you. But we're gonna pour that on, and it's gonna be yummy. So what's gonna happen is we're gonna stick this in the oven, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, there's so much liquid in there. How's that gonna be any good? Because you're not even mixing it, but it just miraculously turns out. We're gonna stick this in the oven, and we're going to bake it at 350 degrees. And for a 9x9, it takes 35 to 40 minutes. So probably for this size, it's going to take probably 45, 55 minutes. And you're gonna be able to tell when the cake is gonna kind of come up, and you're going to get this crusty looking cake on top. And when it starts to get firm in the middle, it is ready. I've never overbaked one. I have underbaked one before, but I've never overbaked one. So if you're unsure if it's ready, let it bake just a little longer, because all of that liquid and the pudding and stuff in there keeps it moist, so it's not over baking. But if you underbake it, you're gonna have a gooey cake in there, which doesn't make it a hot fudge pudding cake. It makes it just kind of a puddle of chocolate. So you want the cake in there. So let's go ahead and stick this in the oven, and I'll bring you back when it comes out. I have just removed it from the oven, and it was in there for just about an hour. Again, my oven doesn't cook as hot, and my milk probably wasn't boiling hot because it had sat there while we did the video. So when you know it's done, you're gonna have kind of a crispy looking top, and then the pudding is going to look quite thick. And it's not gonna be totally thick yet because it needs to cool down just a little bit. But when you stick a knife or something in, it shouldn't be gooey in the cake. The cake should be a cake-like consistency, okay? So we're gonna let this cool for a bit. We don't want to let it cool all the way down because it's best eaten warm. Oh, and I do want to tell you, there is 4 teaspoons of baking powder in this recipe. I had added it to the flour and I had forgotten. As I was typing up the recipe while I was waiting to take this out of the oven, it dawned on me that I didn't put the 4 teaspoons of baking powder in a little cup. I just threw them in the flour, and I forgot about that. So there are 4 teaspoons of baking powder too. And that is what gives it some of the volume, because there's no eggs in here. All right, I'll let this cool and I'll bring you back when we serve it. Okay, we're gonna be eating in about 30 or 40 minutes. So I am gonna go ahead, and this has just been slow cooking for several hours. And doesn't that look good? That looks delicious. I mean, you could have it just like this. You don't even need to have the tortellini. This would be delicious just like this, and it smells so good. But we're gonna add the tortellini to make it even heartier. And so again, I'm using chicken tortellini, but sausage is really good. You can just use Parmesan cheese tortellini. You can use any kind of noodle if you just want a regular pasta. That would be fine. Make it your own. So I am going to add the whole, I don't even know if I'm going to add the whole thing because this is a lot. I think I'm just going to add half of it, because I think if I added the whole thing, we're going to have a pasta dish instead of a soup. There's a lot in there. So I think I'm just going to add, barely half of it. And then I am going to put the rest in a plastic bag in the freezer. So that looks great. They will get a little larger once they get cooked. I now have this on the saute, so it's going to start bubbling and boiling. And then once it gets really hot and bubbly and boiling, I'll just turn it down to, again, slow cook, put the lid on, and let it finish cooking for, again, about 30 to 40 minutes, and I'll bring you right back. Okay, let's open it up and see what we got here. The tortellini have pulled a little of that liquid. They've gotten a lot bigger and they look delicious. So let me put some in a bowl. Doesn't that look delicious? We're just gonna make sure we get a couple of meatballs in there and then some tortellini. And let's see, make sure we get a few beans and things in there too to show that off. Okay, there we go. And let me grab a little cheese. Okay, and this is some Gouda cheese. We'll just put just some little strips of it on there, just for a little extra richness. And if you had Parmesan, you could sprinkle Parmesan. You could do any kind, and you don't even need cheese, but it does make it taste nice. And I've also got a nice warm roll here. So I'm gonna let Landon give this a try for you. And I'm just gonna stick that right there because that's the way we eat it. Okay, now Landon has become the guinea pig. He is
favorite role.
Generously volunteered, and so he's gonna give this a taste.
Alrighty.
And he's not had this one. He's not been home when we've had it, so this is new to him.
It's the first try. So it's for all the marbles here.
Very hot.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's very good.
And then he's got some homemade crusty bread there and the cheese on top. So is this one that you think I should continue making?
Mm-hmm. Yep. A lot of flavor in the broth. I love tortellini, so it goes great with me. It's delicious and just a lot to it, and it's really good.
Do you think you'll volunteer later when I have the dessert? Will you
think
be
I
our
probably
taste
would.
tester?
Yeah, I probably would.
Okay, well, we'll see Landon here in a minute. Okay, well, we're going to eat dinner and we'll be right back. All right, there is what it looks like. It is still hot. And Landon, thank goodness he's here because he again has volunteered to try this. So Landon, there you go.
It's tough work, but somebody's got to do it.
And I was telling them earlier, this is one that if I'd ask for, you know, what dessert would you like to make for dessert?
Yep.
One
it's
of our favorites. So he's going to give it a try for us, you know, because he can't remember what it tastes like.
Yeah, exactly. It's important. You got to get some vanilla ice cream with it because it is rich, but
just like I said, yes.
Whew. That is good.
Oh, good. Let me.
Very rich, and the ice cream just goes perfectly with it, and decadent, and all the other words. It's delicious.
So you wouldn't mind if I send some of this with you?
No, I wouldn't mind.
Okay. You're such a good son.
I guess if I have to.
I hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did and are not currently a subscriber, please consider subscribing. It would help my channel out a lot. Also, don't forget to like and share. And as always, I hope you have a great week, and I hope to see you here next time.